About 4,000 years ago, Allah ordered Prophet Abraham to leave his homeland in Palestine and move south to a place where he would begin a new life. Along with his wife, Siti Hajar, and their son, Ismail, Abraham had to endure great difficulties till he finally reached a barren, uninhabited land. It was again the call of God which later sent Abraham back to Palestine, leaving Hajar and the baby son alone in this unknown valley. And when food supplies ran out, Hajar ran back and forth between two hills, known today as Safa and Marwa, in search of water to feed the young Ismail. After 7 unsuccessful trips, Hajar went back to get her son, only to find that something emerged from the desert sand underneath Ismail's heels. Then, a spring slowly appeared, and Hajar knew right away that it was God's miracle to save both of them from the unbearable heat of the scorching land. The miracle water, known today as Zamzam, had never stopped flowing from that same place ever since. Zamzam became the source of life to this otherwise deserted land. Human settlements appeared one by one here, known back then as Baka, meaning narrow valley. When Abraham returned, Allah instructed the Prophet to build a house of worship known today as the Kaaba in Mecca. The face of Mecca has changed tremendously ever since. This is Mecca more than 1,000 years ago. The inhabitants who belonged to different tribes were led by the Quza'a family, and much later, the Quraysh, from which Muhammad, the last messenger, came from. As settlements in Mecca grew, so did the appearance of the houses. Homes had simple designs and were made from clay and stone. The changing face of Mecca became prominent, especially during the times of Muhammad, when the last prophet successfully made Mecca one of the 2 holiest cities in Islam. This is the Masjidil Haram, the Grand Mosque of Mecca, during the rule of the Umayyad dynasty in the 8th century. The mosque's total area was enlarged significantly during the reign of Al-Walid Abdul Malik, who ruled from the year 705 to 715 AD. After the extensive work, the Masjidil Haram encompassed an area of 10,270 square meters. Al-Walid was also responsible for the building of minarets around the Grand Mosque. And later, during the rule of Al-Muqtadir of the Abbasid dynasty, the Masjidil Haram's area had reached more than 30,000 square meters. Once a year, pilgrims from all over the world converge in this holy city to perform the Hajj, or pilgrimage, the 5th pillar in Islam. In the 1950s, the number of pilgrims reached the 200,000 mark, double the number in the 1920s. With the end of the Second World War, many Muslim nations gained independence from foreign dominance. The relatively peaceful period enabled the Muslims to return to this holy land. pilgrims may be of different races, but they speak the same language. That is, Allah is great. And they too share the same wish to perform the Hajj, the fifth pillar in Islam. The 1950s witnessed the beginning of a major renovation work on the Masjid al-Haram by the Saudi government. The last time the Grand Mosque of Mecca was enlarged was 11 centuries ago during the rule of Al-Muqtadir of the Abbasid dynasty. By the 1960s, the city of Mecca already had its own unique landmark to differentiate itself from the rest of the country. Mecca and also Medina are known as the forbidden cities, where non-Muslims are not allowed to enter. The landmark where non-Muslims were forbidden to enter was situated 24 kilometers from the holy city of Mecca. This is a view of the Masjid al-Haram in the 1960s. The total area of the Grand Mosque then was 160,000 square meters, as compared to 30,000 square meters during the time of Al-Muqtadir, the famous leader of the Abbasid dynasty. In the 1960s, the Masjid al-Haram could accommodate more than 400,000 worshippers at the same time. Each group of pilgrims was led by a mutawif, an experienced guide who would assist the pilgrims to perform the Hajj. It was during the rule of the Umayyad dynasty that the Kaaba began to be adorned with verses from the Holy Quran. Prior to this, only plain cloth was used to cover it. In the year 692 AD, the Kaaba had roof complete with rain gutter. This is part of the gutter which is now on display in the Topkapi Museum in Istanbul, Turkey. It was introduced by Al-Hajjaj Yusuf, the governor of the Umayyad dynasty, and continued to be used till the last Ottoman leader. The gutter was later plated with gold in 1853 during the reign of Sultan Abdul Majid I. The Turkish Ottoman dynasty was founded in 1281. In 1517, one of its leaders, Sultan Salim I, was awarded the key to the Kaaba, which symbolized the beginning of the Ottoman sovereignty over the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. The Ottomans also took great efforts in the maintenance of the Kaaba. Part of the work was to replace the aging wooden doors. They are now on display in the Topkapi Museum in Istanbul. The designs of the Kaaba doors were also refined from time to time. The changing facade can be seen on these doors now on display in the Saudi Museum. They were built during the early years of the Saudi government. Later, the appearance and strength of the doors were reinforced by covering them with copper. Back then, the design of the doors did not include verses from the Holy Quran.